The camera pans over fog-choked streets of colonial Charleston, 1716. A distant tolling bell vibrates through the still air. Something is missing. A narrator whispers, voice low, deliberate. A door creaks open in the dead of night, revealing a single candle flickering across a scrawled note. They will all burn. By morning, 14 plantation owners vanish. Not a body, not a trace, only ashes, scattered like confessions in the wind. Local authorities speak in hushed tones, hiding behind polite smiles, but their eyes betray a deep unease. Families, wealth, and power, a fragile trinity, have been violated, yet none dare speak the truth. This was the night Esperanza de Lima emerged from shadows, her intentions unknown, her past sealed in blood and fire. Esperanza was born into servitude, her cradle placed near a kiln where her father worked the coal furnaces of Charleston's wealthiest plantations. By age 7, she had witnessed the slow decay of human dignity, the hidden cruelties that the city's elite performed behind closed doors. Orphans whispered of rituals performed at twilight, of children vanished into the vast network of catacombs beneath Charleston's streets. Esperanza's eyes reflected the fire she would one day wield. Not just coal, but the burning rage of injustice, the kind forged in silence and secrecy. She learned to listen where others ignored, to see what society demanded she unsee. Charleston was a city of masks. Churches smiled benevolently while storing secrets in attics. Orphanages provided shelter with one hand and extracted obedience with the other. Plantation owners convened in chambers lined with polished oak, exchanging favors, debts, and darker deeds unrecorded in any ledger. Esperanza navigated these networks like a ghost, unnoticed yet omnipresent. Her body small, unthreatening, her mind a furnace of observation. Every whispered confession, every stolen ledger, every terrified glance became fuel for her plan. By the time she was 16, she had memorized the daily routes of every target, the locations of their hidden safes, the weakness in their carefully choreographed facades. In the dead of winter, Esperanza would retreat to the old coal furnaces, her hands scorched and blackened. Here, she communed with the fire, not as destruction, but as revelation. Each flame mirrored the hidden crimes she'd witnessed. The chained servants, the silenced women, the orphan children used as currency in the city's moral decay. The heat did not burn her, it purified her purpose. She imagined a day when the city's gilded cruelty would be exposed in its most elemental form, fire. And within that imagination, she began to plan the unthinkable. The first plantation owner to vanish was Thomas Ellsworth, a man known for his charitable public face but ruthless private dealings. On a moonless night, Esperanza entered his home through the servants' passage, silent as smoke. She left no mark, only a whisper in the coal-fed furnace. By morning, Ellsworth and his closest associates had disappeared. Ash clung to the walls, fine as sand, and a smell of sulfur lingered in the kitchens. Panic surged through Charleston's upper echelons, but suspicion could find no foothold. Only one thing was clear. The fire was intentional, meticulous, and terrifyingly personal. Rumors spread like shadows across cobblestone streets. Children claimed to see a woman gliding between houses, her eyes reflecting flames in the night. Servants muttered about curses, about debts settled in smoke. Town councils convened, desperate for control, but the fear was no longer rational, it was primordial. People began to avoid certain roads after dusk. Traders reported blackened footprints near abandoned homes, though none could trace their origin. Esperanza's presence became a specter, a collective unease that haunted the city's conscious and unconscious alike. The Church of Charleston, bastion of moral guidance, knew more than it would admit. Parishioners whispered about the confessions they never heard, the missing tithes, the silenced witnesses. Esperanza had infiltrated the clergy's offices, cataloging sins in secret. She knew their hypocrisy intimately, each step through the nave of the church a step through a minefield of hidden corruption. When she acted, the fire would not just consume flesh, it would reveal a city's moral rot in its purest, most elemental form. Esperanza's preparation was methodical. She studied ancient texts in Latin and Greek, learning the symbolic significance of fire in purification and vengeance. She created diagrams of the city's furnace networks, identifying choke points and escape routes. The act of burning was more than revenge. It was ritualistic, a reclamation of power over those who had lived in unchallenged cruelty. Every coal she touched, every ember she fed, was imbued with intent, a psychological imprint that would haunt the survivors and the city alike. The terror Esperanza unleashed was not merely physical. Each disappearance carried a psychological weight. The remaining plantation owners became paranoid, seeing fire in reflections, shadows in candlelight, imagining flames licking at their heels in the middle of day. The city's collective consciousness fractured. Trust dissolved, replaced by suspicion and dread. Esperanza watched from the shadows, her satisfaction silent, her presence undetectable, a ghost wielding the most intimate of psychological weapons: fear. The furnaces became instruments of judgment, not just of destruction. Esperanza lured the remaining owners into her carefully staged traps. Each was trapped within the belly of their own hubris, confronted with flames fueled by their own greed. The furnaces roared like a living entity, swallowing bodies in silence, leaving only ash as testimony. This was more than execution. It was revelation. Each blaze told the story the city had refused to acknowledge: corruption, cruelty, and the unbroken chains of exploitation. Children in Charleston's alleys saw shapes in the smoke, whispers in the wind. Orphans who had been hidden away in the attic rooms of wealthy homes began to vanish themselves, though none knew where. Some said Esperanza had taken them, others that she had freed them, but freedom in Charleston came with a shadow. The city's elite pretended not to notice. Families prayed behind locked doors, yet fear was a disease that had already spread. Each witness carried a story too dangerous to tell, their eyes reflecting the flicker of furnaces they would never forget. The ashes left in the coal furnaces seemed almost alive. Some claimed to hear faint voices when wind passed through the chimneys. Others felt a heat that lingered long after the flames had died. Forensic investigation, crude as it was, found only traces of human presence, charred remnants untraceable to any individual. Esperanza's touch had erased identity, leaving only the elemental truth of fire. The city was forced to confront a horror that was both visible and invisible, a narrative written in smoke, beyond law and reason. As months passed, Charleston became a city of whispers and shadows. Merchant families avoided each other. Church leaders faltered under the weight of their own concealed sins. Esperanza's legend grew, a specter who punished without mercy, who punished only those who had hidden cruelty behind civility. Every conversation was cautious, every glance measured. The city had become a maze of fear, and the architect of its psychological collapse remained unseen, untouchable, a force of nature and morality fused in flesh and shadow. Archivists discovered fragments of ledgers detailing the missing 14 and the subsequent chain of disappearances. Names were scratched out, burned from existence, yet small margins held cryptic notes: coal purifies, the fire remembers, ashes tell no lies. Esperanza had created a system of records that would haunt historians centuries later. These fragmented clues suggested deliberate orchestration, yet they contained no signature, no confession. The city's bureaucracy became complicit in the silence, forced to acknowledge an unseen verdict and the truth of corruption it had long ignored. Church interiors reflected candlelight across cracked stained glass. Priests who had colluded with the city's elite could not reconcile the moral weight of the disappearances. Some left Charleston, others fell into madness. Esperanza herself was never seen in holy spaces, yet her presence lingered like a judgment. Confessionals became spaces of terror. No priest dared interpret their own dreams lest they glimpse her eyes reflected in the darkness. The city's spiritual architecture had been infiltrated. Every sacred symbol turned inward as guilt became palpable and collective. Years later, the orphans of Charleston whispered the name Esperanza with reverence and fear. She had walked among them like a guardian and a reaper. Some children grew to spread stories in coded languages, fables designed to ensure that the city never forgot its complicity. Esperanza had taught them that silence could be weaponized, that observation was power, that fire could be both destruction and revelation. They became living testimonies to her acts, the city's hidden memory encoded in their fears and loyalty. Flames, long thought dormant, returned in sporadic incidents decades later. Chimneys roared in the dead of night. Shadows moved where no one should have been. Some believed Esperanza had never left, that she had become one with the city's moral consciousness, a force responding to hidden sins. The wealthy and the powerful began to quietly vanish again, though modern records never acknowledged it. Charleston had become a living testament to the psychology of fear, to the power of a single person who observed, recorded, and executed judgment. Over time, Esperanza de Lima became legend rather than fact. Scholars debated her existence. Oral histories twisted her deeds into morality tales. Yet fragments of her plan, her fire rituals, and her careful manipulation of societal fears persisted. Every generation would feel the weight of absence, the suggestion of hidden justice enacted without legal authority. In this, Esperanza transcended mortality, her acts a blueprint of terror and revelation, of suppressed truths emerging through elemental violence. Charleston's legacy was indelibly shaped by Esperanza's methods. Generations of plantation owners and city elites carried a shadowed conscience, a fear of unseen judgment that lingered in dreams and conversations. The psychological landscape of the city had been altered. Guilt, complicity, and terror became inherited traits. Scholars would later write of the coal furnaces effect, a term describing the haunting impact of witnessing invisible judgment. Esperanza's influence was not just historical. It was psychological, lingering in every corridor, alley, and unused hearth. In the ruins of the last coal furnace, hidden beneath layers of modern construction, a faint heat still radiates. Ash remains, fine as dust, impossible to remove completely. Esperanza de Lima is gone, yet her judgment endures, a reminder that cruelty cannot remain hidden forever. The city remembers her not in monuments, but in the subtle tremor that passes through its descendants when fire is mentioned. In Charleston, every shadow, every whisper, carries a memory of flames that revealed the hidden corruption of men, and the power of a woman who became a myth through vengeance, observation, and the elemental force of fire.